and as a consequence, their lives are improving dramatically.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure people are like, have had a huge conversion after,
it's
and
not
they're much happier.
But
and
I think
outcomes.
Outcomes, that's an appalling doctrine.
Why?
In this video, we're going to be going through a classic Jordan Peterson debate with two feminists. This is one for the ages where Jordan Peterson does what he does best. So with that, let's get into the clips.
So Jordan, you've done endless interviews. You've been publicising your book, and they've generated plenty of heated debate.
And I actually sold out the Apollo. It had 5,000 seats.
All right, stop boasting. Do you think, though, because of the heat that has been generated, that your views have been misrepresented at times?
Oh, definitely, but that's, that's part and parcel of the process. I did take a very forceful stance, let's say, against some of the excesses of the radical left-wingers, and it's in their best interest to paint me as somehow a figure of the extreme right, because then I don't have to be contended with. But, I mean, it's easy for people's views to be oversimplified in a very large public debate.
She really is contemptuous of him from the very start here. You can see that she is no Jordan Peterson fan. Now, notice in the next clip how she tries to impose little falsehoods about Jordan Peterson. This is to set up the trap that she's about to lay and make her question that she's about to ask sound less preposterous, if that's even possible. Of course, he knows exactly what he's gotten himself into, and watch how he controls the direction of the conversation and doesn't allow her to misrepresent his views.
I mean, in terms of some of the issues, I mean, you say you've been painted as an extreme right-winger.
No, some people have tried that. Not very successfully, but they've tried it.
And you came to prominence in part over your opposition to this law that we just talked about in Canada, proposing the use of preferred pronouns for transgender people. Just for clarity.
Mandating them.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying that you should do it.
No, that you had to do it.
Right, you had to do it by law. But just...
You would have noticed the way that she intentionally tried to frame that question to make it seem as though this is just a proposal for you to use their preferred pronouns, that's all. And to a viewer that doesn't really know anything about the situation, it would probably make Jordan Peterson sound like a real dick. And that's what she intends to do. She intends to make him look bad and make him look uncaring, which is the perfect setup for her next question.
Just for clarity, do you think a trans woman is a real woman?
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well, I'm asking you, in your mind, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
No.
Why not? Because
I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think that people should be treated with respect and dignity if they happen not to fit easily into a gender category. That's a different issue.
Right.
But it's a matter of definition. And I actually think it's a foolish argument in some sense. Because what do you mean by real?
Well, I mean, you've just clarified that, though. You don't think that a trans woman is a woman. And do you think that that is what is behind or explains your opposition to this idea of a law mandating you to use a preferred pronoun, is because you don't actually believe that that's the truth, that a trans woman is a woman and therefore you can't use that pronoun?
No, that's not my argument at all.
Really?
Yeah, really. My argument is that the government shouldn't compel voluntary speech.
No, but I know what your argument is, and
you've
made it very clearly.
But that's exactly it. There's no
motivation
behind it.
But you don't believe
I wouldn't have put
a woman.
everything on online in my life to take the stance I did unless I had thought that through very deeply. And I've thought it through very deeply. There aren't hidden motivations that have to do with some arbitrary prejudice against trans people.
Okay.
It's pure and simply this. There's never been a time in English common law history where the government compelled speech, and the Canadian government dared to do that. And that was unacceptable. And they masked it with this show of compassion for the oppressed, and I don't buy it.
Right, but you would, as I think you said, at an individual level, if somebody asked you, somebody asked you to use a particular pronoun, you would do so.
Well, I have.
You have?
Yes.
Right, fine.
Yeah.
He answered it perfectly. What is a woman? What is this real woman that you speak of? She asked, what is a woman to you? What is it that you believe in your mind? Well, it's not about what somebody believes in their mind. A woman is not some abstract idea. A woman is an adult human female. And it's so manipulative to the viewers and Peterson alike to frame this question in a way that's so divorced from reality. And purely to frame Peterson as some sort of bigot that's made this stance because he secretly has this sort of internal repression aggression against transgenderism. This is something that's objectively untrue, and maybe she didn't do her research or didn't do her due diligence, but I doubt that. And anybody who's listened to Jordan Peterson talk about it, which you would suspect that she would have when he's about to come on your show, knows that he was taking a stance against government mandating speech. And how about her reaction when he said no and why he believes that a trans woman is not a real woman? She almost jumped out of her skin. She thought that she'd done it. She thought that she had figured him out and cracked the code. But she simply must have forgot who she was sitting next to, because every time she would try and build this little house of cards that she's building, Jordan Peterson would just come right through with the karate chop. She thought that she would be able to set all of these little falsehoods and presuppositions and run a mile with it, but Jordan Peterson came through and derailed her little manipulative train. And of course, he owned the situation and he steered the conversation in the direction that he intended.
Let's talk about feminism. Are you a feminist?
No, not as it's currently defined, certainly not.
No. Well, in any other definition?
Well, I think that anybody who doesn't think that the competitive landscape should be opened up for equality of opportunity is not thinking. And so everyone's interests are better served if people have as equal access to opportunity to display their talents and to manifest their talents in the world as possible. So in that sense, certainly. But feminism now, and this is why it's so deeply unpopular, a very small minority of women in the UK identify as feminists. And the reason for that is it's primarily become an ideological weapon. And it's an ideology that I detest, actually, the ideology that it's associated with, collectivist ideology.
Right. I mean, okay, and that's your view about feminism. Aisha, are you a feminist?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a very proud feminist. And when I was a special advisor in government, I worked on women and equality issues, and I'm very proud actually of a piece of legislation I got on the statute book with my former boss Harriet Harman, the Equality Act in 2010, which strengthened our anti-discrimination laws. And I fought very hard to get more women into public life, into the Labour Party, and I'm very, very proud of being a feminist, hence my pink dress.
Oh, well, all right. Obviously reverting to type then in the pink dress.
Absolutely, well.
You would like men to regain or reclaim their strength physically, mentally and morally. Is that broadly correct?
I would say morally, fundamentally, but I think the other things go along with that.
Right, and if that
But it isn't men precisely who I'm speaking to. It's people. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm actually interested in individuals, and I'm interested in their fortification against tragedy. You know, every time I do an interview, the interview is always political. It's always political.
Well, the clue is in the title of this programme. We are the Daily Politics.
No, fair enough. No, look, fair enough. And I'm not casting aspersions at this programme, but the fundamental news that's important about what I'm doing isn't the political element. And the people who talk to me don't talk politically. They say they've watched my lectures.
But part of it is that I think for a lot of people the kind of personal does become the political.
Or the political becomes the personal.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the...
but in this situation, a lot of people are wrong, because primarily what's happening is people are watching my lectures, and as a consequence, their lives are improving dramatically.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure people are have had a huge conversion after, and they're much happier once they've been...
It's not a conversion.
But
isn't it funny there how she virtue signals about her feminism and this Equality Act, which is identity politics, that she rammed into law? But when Jordan Peterson talks about the many people that he's influenced and the impact and change that he's having in relation to the context of the conversation, she responds with a flippant little pat on the head. Oh yeah, I'm sure people have all had these conversions. And it just goes to show that she's so happy to virtue signal and say how much she just wants equality for people. But when it comes to helping millions of young men, it's whatever. And this is something that grinds my gears quite a bit. People are so unbelievably dismissive of Jordan Peterson and the impact that he's having in the world. And I talk about him a lot on this channel, but just from my personal experience with Jordan Peterson, he's completely changed my life, especially considering the fact that I lost my father when I was 14 and I was seriously lacking any sort of male role model in my life until I stumbled across Jordan Peterson's work about 5 years ago. I can safely say that Dr. Peterson's work has guided me through my 20s. His work was exactly what I needed to hear at the time to be able to set my bearings straight, take personal responsibility for my life, and potentially even realize the potential that I could have in the world. And every time I've gone astray and started engaging in the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that for me has been unfortunately all too common, the common theme with that is that it's been in times where I've gone away from listening to Jordan Peterson and studying his work. And then every time I've come back to him like a runaway rebel youth coming home to his non-judgmental parents, it's put me back on the straight and narrow and towards a path of righteousness. And this is why I pay so much homage to Jordan Peterson on this channel, and why I have so much respect for him and talk about his work so much. Because for me, he's been more than an intellectual or an author or a public figure. He's been something of a father figure and a crucial part of my own development as a human being. And if you guys are interested in the story of the impact that Peterson's had in my life, and for me to go in more detail about that, then let me know in the comments, because there's a lot more to that story.
What I would like to do is kind of almost, I think at the moment the discussion about feminism is very divisive, and sometimes it can sort of be like, okay, men have to lose and women have to gain. Actually, everybody has a lot to gain by greater equality. Now, whether you get the equality of outcome that you want, I think only time will tell. But certainly, equality of opportunity is very important. And actually, a lot of men would benefit from that. So I think a lot of men are having a lot of crises at the moment in terms of mental health, suicide issues, their own sense of identity, because I think some of the stereotypes put on men are quite limiting for them as well. I think they make men quite unhappy as well.
The devil's in the details with regards to equality, because I'm an advocate of equality of opportunity, but
and
I
outcomes.
think the idea outcomes, that's an appalling doctrine.
Why?
All right. This is somebody who has been responsible for legislation and supposedly a high-level journalist, and neither of them have even the faintest idea about why equality of outcome, or equity as everyone likes to call it, is a terrible idea. These are the kinds of people that would be so easily led to hell on the path of good intentions. And this is no new idea. I know Jordan Peterson has brought it to the fore, but listen to Thomas Sowell talking about this in 1978.
You set up processes whose end result may not be any more or less inequality than exists now, but the question is, those processes may indeed reduce freedom greatly. I would go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide, that place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings. To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum.
Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and turn that notification bell on, guys, because I'm going to be breaking down some old school Thomas Sowell debate soon, and you will not want to miss that. But back to the point, it is so much easier to sit there and argue that everyone should get an equal outcome and that everything should be fair than it is to argue the factual case that you cannot achieve equality of outcome unless at gunpoint. People are different, and it's just the reality of the world that different people from different circumstances and different walks of life and different biological makeups will choose different things. And actually, the more equal opportunity people have, the less equal outcomes they will get, as Peterson is about to school them about.
All right. Well,
because you have to produce an unbelievably potent bureaucracy to make the ever greater and ever finer distinctions that are necessary to enforce equality of outcome. How many group differences are you going to equalize across? Is it just gender and sex? How many genders?
No, so
gender and ethnicity? How many genders?
I think
how many ethnicities? How many races?
We'll let Aisha answer.
I think what people are trying to do with this, and certainly as somebody who has sought to sort of do this myself, I think you set yourself ambitions for what you would like to see, and then you try and remove as many of the structural barriers and obstacles. So you try and create that fair crack of the whip and that equality of opportunity to see where you get to with the outcomes.
That's
now,
fine.
We are in very early stages. It's only 100 years since women got the vote in this country. We have had a long established patriarchal society and set up for a long time in the world, in this country. So I think we have a long way to go to see where it plays out. There is no country in the world where we really do have gender equality properly yet in terms of real decision making and real
Some of the
power.
Scandinavian countries, maybe?
But they're still not quite there. And I think you've spoken a lot about this. There's still a way to go in Scandinavia. Things are not perfect in Scandinavia
I haven't
at
spoken
all.
about that specifically. I've spoken about
You spoke about the right stuff yesterday. You talked about the Scandinavian.
Well, I've spoken about the fact that, you see, one of the things that's happened in the analysis of the differences between men and women is that the social constructionist claim is that the differences are socially constructed, right? Is that it's a consequence of environment that men and women differ. But what the scientific literature indicates is that as cultures become more egalitarian, like they have in Scandinavia, the differences between men and women actually increase rather than decreasing, which is a direct repost to the social constructionist view. So they just deny all that. The biggest differences in the world in interest and temperament are between Scandinavian men and women. It's exactly the opposite of what everyone predicted.
I love when Jordan Peterson brings up the Scandinavian example because it actually flies in the face of the worldview of the equity mob. It just simply disproves their fictitious narrative that the only thing stopping women from being 50-50 in STEM fields and taking over boardrooms and slam dunking on LeBron James's head in the NBA is the oppressive patriarchy. And once they can simply break free from those shackles, everything will be equal and we will live in the uniform communist society that we've all dreamed of and all stand around holding hands and singing John Lennon's Imagine in unison.
Can I just pick up on one thing you said a little earlier in the interview, which you said it's the moral guidance that you are focused on. You think that is particularly important. How do you square that with the behaviour of perhaps arguably, you know, a prominent alpha male president of the United States, Donald Trump, when his behaviour, I mean, he is accused of having an affair with a porn star.
Nice.
Does that fit with morally reclaiming?
Well, I would say that was rather clearly immoral.
Right.
Yeah,
but you would
not
still,
to be a target for emulation.
But you still would have voted for him over Hillary Clinton as an identity politics. I mean, it's just how
none
do
of that
you
was on the table, and I said I might have voted for him on a whim. That's all.
But you also did say you started out feeling quite close to Hillary Clinton. Can I just come on the
very quickly because we've got to move on.
In a way, I don't care what Trump does in terms of his private life, but what I don't have is him stopping or potentially stopping other women having agency over their reproductive rights and lots of men taking those decisions.
It's all about where the moral outrage lies and what's more morally outrageous in people's eyes. Is it his behaviour or the identity politics for you on the...
You know what they say? When in doubt, orange man bad. Like, why are you bringing up Donald Trump's morals and policies? It is so irrelevant. And it's funny how they brushed him off before when he said, listen, this always turns into something political for me, but what I prefer to focus on is the millions of lives that I'm impacting around the world. And then as we discussed, she proceeded to give him a little pat on the head. And then them bringing up Donald Trump and politics again, which has absolutely nothing to do with Jordan Peterson, just shows that it was in one ear, out the other. How does Trump banging a porn star have anything to do with Jordan Peterson's message of taking personal responsibility? It's so funny and such a common theme from throughout Trump's presidency. Whenever conservatives would be making a good point in a debate, the other party would just Donald Trump, orange man bad. That's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that link tree in the top of the comments or in the bio if you want to check me out on social media or if you want to join the Rattlesnake TV community on Locals. And if you like that video, then you'll absolutely love the one I did on how Jordan Peterson has mastered the art of communication. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, then make sure you do so right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.